You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
All right. Again, I'm going to preface this with what I say when the discussion gets a little heated and could cause somebody to be very, very angry at people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Again, stay peaceful. The psychological war that you're involved in by default by being here in the United States today wants you to be violent. You're not to act out violently. I suggested what TPUSA should do to ensure that their people carry themselves appropriately throughout life and become those leaders that they should be, where they are using government process. Again, if you don't try to use it, then you really can't condemn it. You can't sit back and say that it doesn't exist. Of course, in my case, I tried it on a couple occasions. It's not going to work when the lawyers are part of it. The part that you need to do is realize, or the thing that you need to do and realize is that when you are at the street level of calling a police officer in, you're doing it with a clean slate, which means the deep state shadow government hasn't set you up yet. And that may get you set up. If you're seen not to act out inappropriately, they will say that you're acting out inappropriately, that you're doing something inappropriately, but let that happen. Again, I might look like I'm not using the system. However, I'm 25 years forward of the beginning of this. And I was in government when it began, so there was process in government that's supposed to be self-policing. And that's what I believed our nation was. That's what I believed the government was. But in reality, it's self-criminalizing today. And it's just a fact. Just face it. What they'll tell you that it's the game of life. The Soviets, the Chinese indoctrinated government employees and people in the public that are these authoritarian communist oligarchs that back the government employees corruptly and criminally. And Soros is only one of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of billionaires and millionaires that do what I'm telling you is occurring. They engage in it routinely. And that includes government officials that have money and that have power that can bestow gifts, such as senators and congresspeople. We know some of them are corrupt. Drinking my tea there, a little bit of, I'm not sure how they call it, rooibos or something like that, rooibos or something like that. It's an African tea, very well for you. It supposedly counteracts the enzyme in your arterial structure that makes it stiff. It causes it to relax. It doesn't allow it to constrict and be stiff. So it minimizes that. I don't know if that's true. I never began drinking it for that, but I did read that just to make sure there were no side effects that I didn't want. It actually had positive effects because I was wondering if it had a stimulant. I felt energized on it, but it actually was relaxing that part of the process. And in reality, when a stimulant stimulizes you, it actually increases that constriction of your arterial structure. But over time, that can actually cause your adrenals to wear down, and then you have less energy in the long run. You may have a quick boost, but then it dies out. So again, to go back to what I was saying, the government employees are backed by people similar to Soros, but it could be a millionaire in the town that you live. It doesn't even require to be a millionaire. It could be somebody with power, somebody with money, somebody that sells cars. That'll give them a car for a great price or give them a car. Somebody that sells real estate, gets them a house deal real cheap. Somebody that's in construction, a contractor. It doesn't matter. This is what's going on in the nation. Everybody's wheeling and dealing. They tell you that's the game of life, but it's actually what's destroying the nation. They'll say, no, no, that's not bringing drugs in, but it is. The DEA agent that was making deals with the cartels is no different than the rest of the deep state shadow government criminal enterprise employees. That's who he is. He's really deep state. That's how he continued for so long. Hansen, the FBI espionage spy, he continued for so long because he was deep state. He was hands off. Nobody would investigate him. I told you Mueller's the same way. Mueller actually made it to retirement. So again, these things are going on. You have to be very smart about how you carry yourself. So that's why I suggested that TPUSA should teach its leaders how to engage in a security protocol with organization in a way that presents a professional appearance. That's going to really stop what they're doing to you. Even if the law enforcement is somehow following and corrupt and won't do what they're supposed to do, they'll get frustrated because you're actually presenting something that doesn't cause you to look like you're falling apart and acting out just real quick. And I know the congressman's son did a well job. However, if he had a security protocol, he'd have looked like Eddie Gallagher on a SEAL mission. That's what we want. And it's not to be militarized, but it's to be somebody that engages in lawful response with military precision. So again, military precision is important because when all things hit the fan, then military precision carries you through the chaos. That's not to say that it'll be militarily precise, although you won't miss a beat. You'll at least look like you won't miss a beat, even though you're missing a beat here and there. You hear me drinking my tea there every so often. So I am in occupied Oklahoma. The deep state is actively working. If they disappear visually from your view, it doesn't mean they're gone. That's one of the psychological manipulations they use, because your life will still be failing, and they'll go, well, what? Enter the thought in your mind from Satan. What is this? It's still failing. It must be you. So again, that's one of the things they do. But they also use that to come back and be there in a visual way. Say, aha, we're back. Now you can't get rid of it. See, we left. You thought you're okay. Now you're not okay. It's all psychological warfare, prisoner of war camp, psychological torture being engaged in by criminals in government that are going to tell you they're doing it against a criminal and keeping your community safe. What they're doing is creating time bombs, human time bombs. They don't know where they're going to act out. They did not know where Omar Mateen was going to act out in Orlando or anywhere else in the world. But what they did know is that they were psychologically operating them. They were using CIA techniques, and there was a great chance that he was going to attempt to engage in a terrorist activity at some point, quote unquote, acting out. But he actually got to the point of the terrorist activity before they stopped him. So again, they don't care. They're very reckless. These are FBI agents. These are DHS agents. They're marshals. They're police officers. They're your mayor. They're your governor. They're your congressman. They're your senator. Where they are. Where those people aren't those people, then they're not those people. But you have to realize that nobody in the world is going to protect you from the deep state in reality. Nobody in the world is going to protect you from the deep state in reality. So what does that mean? A lot of people aren't real deep state victims. The deep state is attacking them, but it's not a contract murder. They're not looking to murder the person. They're just attempting to posture or back somebody down. In my life, I've been ordered murdered. There's a contract to kill me. Was a contract to kill me. Same thing with Jonathan Luna. Same thing with Jonathan Nichols. Now, I know I was calling him Don Nichols, and there must be a reason for that. So make sure you protect everyone. There are other victims today of the deep state. Many people don't commit suicide, but their life keeps tumbling until something tragic happens. There's nothing you can do. Don't listen to them say, well, if he'd only stop speaking. And then when I stop speaking, they'll say, see, it went away. By the nature of me not saying anything, right? That's why you'll hear me say, if I don't speak about it, it doesn't mean it went away. Because that's one of the psychological warfare scams. So essentially, the Russians and the Chinese, along with some criminal elements of other entities such as drug cartels, began subverting our government employees. It's kind of a private enforcement organization now. The governments are no longer public organizations. They're owned by Soros. They're owned by other members of your community, which means on a given day, if nobody puts any input in and the police officer is not corrupt, you will have what is known as, police protection. If there's some input, you don't have it. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've done. It doesn't matter. Don't let them tell you that there's some sort of organized system of who each person is that they're doing this to. So you don't really have police protection in your communities when that exists within your communities. And I'd say it's in at least 75% of the communities today. They'll find a reason, a conservative reason, a liberal reason, a green reason, a Christian reason, an Islamic reason, a Hindu reason. It doesn't matter. Satan will present that reason for that community. The key is not to accept the beast, not to become the deep state. And some of them say, well, I'm against the deep state. But if you ask them what they're doing, they're engaged in deep state activity. That's why they're trying to say the only thing that's the deep state out there. And President Trump's kind of at the mercy of the machine that's doing it to a certain degree. I mean, he's fighting the deep state and they don't want him to do that. However, they're trying to make it a Democrat-Republican thing. That's a joke. I mean, with that, you're going to enslave yourself even worse. That's why it keeps mission creeping further, because you keep going into that CIA set up scam of political party when it comes to the deep state. Obviously, there are political parties. We use that for what? We use that for election. That's not supposed to be something that we use for harming another person, but that does exist. But yet, what's the reality? It's in all parties. The Soviets aren't that stupid. The Chinese weren't that stupid. The U.S. communists are not that stupid, whether they be communists that are conservative or communists like Putin or communists that are liberal, which really, I don't think we have too many. Maybe some of the South American ones might be a little liberal. I guess Evo was a liberal communist. Or green communist, whatever. Communism is not anything that's either left or right. And I've told you that before. Communism is authoritarian government where the state is capitalism. Where the state is capitalism. Now, we have a new style of communism within the United States. We have free enterprise communism, where it's, again, the psychological spycraft application of communism. Our corporations are communist, and they believe they have a right to kill you. Corporations such as Google, corporations such as Microsoft, corporations such as Amazon believe that they have a right to kill you. The only thing stopping them are individuals within your community that know it's happening. That's the only thing stopping them. They have murdered. Google has murdered. Amazon has murdered. Psychological methods, spycraft, and possible outright contrast. Because once you move into spycraft murder, then outright murder is on par with it. It's not very far. No, it's on par with it. They like to make a differentiation. Spycraft murder is 10 times as evil than pulling a gun and shooting somebody. Spycraft murder is 10 times the evil that pulling a gun and shooting somebody is. It's that evil. It's that horrific. It's that tragic. It's that traumatic. And in some cases involves causing a person to grab a firearm and act out inappropriately. Again, as I've told you, the information you're hearing can cause you to get angry. Stay peaceful. The key is to stay peaceful. The more crime that exists, the more that the deep state is going to move their communist empire forward. They're no part of the republic, no matter how many times they say Republican or Republic. They are not part of a democratic nation, no matter how many times they say Democratic Party. Many of the elections have been stolen in California, Illinois, New York. They're not going to police their elections. Florida, most likely. It's everywhere. It's not only the liberal states. Americans can't get forward. They're not being trained or allowed to enter into workforce at a higher level. The president is trying to reverse that. The president's trying to reverse that. That is a calculated psychological warfare activity to cause immigration and to cause the U.S. citizen to be below foreigners. You can look all day. If you go to Naples, Florida, if you go to Palm Beach, Florida, if you go to Dallas, Texas, if you go to Los Angeles, California, if you go to Seattle, Washington, if you go to these places where they have multi-million-dollar homes in cookie-cutter communities, not cookie-cutter communities, but that's how they're laid out. They're that large, where you have multi-million-dollar homes just stretching on as you would in a simple suburban neighborhood. You go to those places, you'll find a high level of foreigners owning those homes while U.S. citizens are living in little shacks, because that was designed by Comey, that was designed by Mueller, that was designed by Brennan, that was designed by Gina Haspel, that was designed by CIA before them, FBI before them. Because they believe that that's their equal. They don't believe you as a U.S. citizen are their equal. You are here to be ruled by them. Who's Comey lying to, or besides himself, when he says don't be socialist? Comey, you jumped over socialism and became authoritarian communist government employee decades ago. So Comey would theoretically be a conservative communist, similar to Vladimir Putin. And of course, we know that Mueller was working with Putin in some way, whether it was shadow knowledge or not, to include the murder of U.S. citizens. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. That's what they're so freaked out about. Sedition, treason, defrauding the United States, espionage. FBI, that's what they're engaged in. But what did they do? They changed all the laws and all the regulations and all the investigative process to say, no, it's not that. It's this. Of course not. It's what I say it is. And they are who I say they are. Now, do you have an FBI agent out there that won't do it? Yes. But somewhere in their career, they're going to either do it or be put out. Somewhere in their career, they're either going to do it or be put out. However, they might be able to weather the storm. Might. Not to say they can. I haven't spoke with anybody that's not corrupt yet. Well, I haven't seen anybody that isn't corrupt. I mean, look in the news. Look in the news. FBI, you don't see anything going on like defrauding the United States anywhere? You don't see it, right? No, they're corrupt. Enforce it over here, don't enforce it over there. Again, elitism. The elitists are paying them to do this. They retire, they get big jobs, they go back and say, hey, that person's okay, that person's not okay. George Soros talks to a CIA guy over here, CIA gal over there. Oh, but we're what? They're not U.S. citizens. Why aren't you elevating U.S. citizens? Why are you elevating foreigners? And I know George Soros, I guess, is he a citizen? I think he's a citizen, at least in paper. Probably bought the thing. But you have to understand, George Soros is only one of tons of international millionaires and billionaires that have been buying this nation for decades. That's why you can't get a job that they get. That's why you don't have a house that they have. It's not that hard to succeed in the United States, but you can't do it when the communists that have been here for over 20 years running the government say you can. And it doesn't take anything for that to happen. What they'll do is point to something they may have caused, because I'm not saying what they're talking about any individual is true. What they say about Robin Gritz is probably not true. But you may see something in Robin Gritz's life, such as she's unemployed right now, that kind of looks like what they say about Robin Gritz, because they're creating it using spycraft and billionaires such as George Soros. Eventually, the boss is going to say, I can't keep this woman employed anymore because it's destroying my life. And if I want my life at least similar to what I had, I have to put her out. So again, it's that idea of harming your neighbor. Communism. They did this in the Soviet Union. They do it in the FBI. They do it in the CIA. They do it in the U.S. Marshal Service. They do it in the Department of Justice. They do it in NSA. They do it everywhere, and they do it against U.S. citizens out in the public at will and on an individual and or group basis, which means every single FBI agent is out there that wants to do this, doing it to a U.S. citizen for any reason that they want to. I guarantee it. I absolutely guarantee it. You are no longer in the United States that you thought you were. You're simply an antelope drinking water from the pond, waiting for the predator to come along from the government to take you out. And you might die of old age. You just might. But one of your neighbors isn't going to. They're going to be killed by the U.S. government, even by natural causes, by causing doctors not to be able to treat the person based upon the same activity I explained going on in Robin Gritz's life about not being able to keep a job. Also, distracting a person so they can't mind their own health, which means, okay, I have to go do this now, I have to go do that now. Getting in the gyms, getting into medical treatment, getting around it, getting into any type of healthy and well activities such as church, religion, charity. And then giving people way in those places to make money and say, you do what we say. When we say somebody doesn't get to engage in charity, then they don't get engaged in charity, and then you can keep your nonprofit check, Planned Parenthood. So on and so forth, because it's also in the church. Because it's also in the church. Again, don't get the thought of it's only conservative or liberal. Because there is no left or right. There's only up or down. And we're going down, have been going down for years. And you know it's down there. Again, stay peaceful. Things I say can make you angry, and you should be angry. You should be livid. You should be furious. You should want to spit in their face, but don't spit in their face. Give God the way to be violent, but don't be violent. The Bible tells you to give way for God's vengeance. And praise God in all that you do, because it's not God's fault. God's not in control here. You turned it over to the FBI, the DOJ, the COA, or CIA. You said it was okay. You said it was okay. You be in charge. You tell us what the truth is. You tell us who lives and dies. And we'll secretly operate around this community. And if you put a guy in or a gal in to drug him in a restaurant or her in a restaurant and she commits suicide, well, too bad, because they're not us, right? And now, then you not being you is a Russian or a Chinese. Don't let the Democrats fool you. They've been in bed with the Russians and the Chinese for decades. They're putting that on President Trump because they don't want it put on them. It's called psychological projection. The FBI does the same thing. U.S. Marshal Service does the same thing. IRS does the same thing. Local police do the same thing. The state police, and no, it's not human nature. It's crime and defrauding the United States of America. as well as deprivation of rights under color of law. And then the big ones: treason, sedition, espionage, and in some cases, murder in the first degree. Well, praise God in all that you do, because that's all you got. Remember to praise God. That's all you got. Praise God.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry, presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.